Recording in progress.
Hey, what's up?
I feel my food.
It's cute.
For sure.
We just had this Monday. And I thought we had something that Thanksgiving, where's that like at the lab exam?
Good God, what a dick move.
No.
Someone did a dick move or something?
I mean, we have, it's up to us, right, as faculty to make sure that your butts are in the seats, like the hours that you're supposed to be and all of this. But like at the same time, we have a little leeway. So it's like if I give you guys the week off for Thanksgiving, that's also my choice as long as we're covering our information.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't see having an exam on Thanksgiving week. That just.
Yes, it really does.
If there, it's, you know, professor's choice to have a class that week.
So that when we have, don't we have the final like 3 days after?
Yeah.
So we have the unit test, right? 3 days the final, and then lab would be this week. Wednesday, lab and lab. They did. Our lab. Our lab. Oh, it's, you know, oh. I finished. I did it on Sunday. You know, I like got most of it.
Okay, so welcome back from the weekend. If you submitted your slides last night, everybody should have submitted the slides, something last night.
What?
Yes, due date for this presentation was last night at midnight. And anybody who wasn't submitted after that due date will incur late points. Now, as far as the content that might be on anything that was submitted late, I will still make comments like suggestions for how to improve it, and you still have time to improve it before your presentation. Okay, if I made.
We're talking about the virus presentation?
Yes.
Where it'd be like at the end of the report?
No, so that's part of what was dictated in the description in the assignment and everything.
Oh.
That was due last night by midnight before we start unit
Oh,
4.
shit.
Yes, so get it in ASAP, man. Don't incur too many late points. So,
Okay, apparently I'm just stupid then, my bad.
if you're not alone, I will say this, you're not alone, Grace. I have at least one person in every section that did not get something. That's why I'm saying this, you can still get your points, you're not getting a 0, just, you're gonna get late points.
Hold on, I have a question since I forgot to do this joke during the test. Do we have to do all that?
Right.
Do we have to do all that?
Right. So anyway, so we'll start, today we have 4 people presenting. On Wednesday, we will have 6. So I've had 2 people from my online course ask to present in person. So I'm tacking them on to Wednesday because online people's presentations, I only see them next week. And then like we have, no, I see next week. I see them this week and next week, right? So this week, as we all know, we have our last 2 labs. And then next week we have the review and the lab final. I know. And then, so because this week is their last lab week and Monday next week is optional for them. And then of course, lab final, I don't have time to show presentation. And theirs are all recorded. Or they have had the option, a few of them, to contact me to do it in person. I let them choose any day this week, and I have a couple that chose Wednesday with us. So keep in mind that we will have 6 presentations on Wednesday. They'll go at the end of everybody's in here. So they'll present in person. They just didn't want to do the recording, which is fine, right? Like, yeah, I'm okay with that. Anybody have any questions about how this is going to go for the rest of the semester?
So how many late points do you get per day that it's the
I
thing?
think it's 10%. I think something like that. I mean, the Canvas, I use whatever the Canvas automatic deduction thing is. So
It's over.
you know, whatever. It's not that many whenever you look at the grand scheme of things, because this is meant to be easy points, right? So if you guys miss a few things here or there, it's up to you if you want to fix it. It's up to you if you just want to leave it as is. Do you, y'all? Don't let me stop you from, you know, living your best life. So if I give you, and again, almost all of you in here submitted it, right? And I left some sort of comment like you need to add this, change this, or do that. And so if you guys choose to do that, you choose to. You see what points. Now I've already put grades in for it on the rubric. So now you see where you're lacking, and I've added comments on what to include and where you're lacking, and you guys can make updates as you see fit. Whatever day you present, that grade will be updated based on what you're presenting. So if you left out like entire slides, and I gave you like 0 points on some of them, because some people just submitted what they had, whatever. Now you know you better have that stuff on your presentation day. You'll get all those points back on that presentation day, but you put most of your presentation together, so you're not getting late points. That's the idea, okay? So you can edit it, add pictures, notes, whatever you need to, up until the day you present. Does that make sense? Okay. Almost everybody's was completely done. So kudos to all of you for having that completed. You might have to make some minor edits or whatever. That's great. So we'll go through the systems of the body. First is skin and eye. Today, Wednesday, will be the nervous system. After that is cardio and lymph, then respiratory, then GI, and then genitourinary, which is mostly STIs. So that's what to expect for the rest of this semester. Of course, before we get to the last week, which is GI and genitourinary, we have Thanksgiving break in there. So there'll be an entire week that you guys will have off from my class. And you can do whatever you want with that time, right? Get whatever you want with that time, because I know I need it. So I know everybody could use at least a break from micro during that week. So, oh, okay. Cool. I forgot to open up the exam this weekend. I'm sure nobody's crying over that, but like I will have it open today. I'll open up for you guys to review whatever questions you missed, and it will be available for you guys to study from for the rest of the semester.
Unit 3? Yeah.
Yes, and units 1 and 2 should still be open as well. So when you get to studying for the final, those should be available. If you guys encounter any problems in those, or like I've been saying, any typos, misspelling, I chose the wrong answer, and you notice that, email me always about those things. It's never a bad thing to let me know. Again, I write all those things by hand. I choose the answers by hand, and I change them every semester. So sometimes when I change the question, we're going to change the answer twice. So because I'm only human, please let me know. I have a couple students that will like, our work ahead types, and they'll like let me know that like, hey, I did this quiz and I'm pretty sure you did this wrong. Then they feel bad for like calling me out. Please don't. I can't make it better for the next semester if you guys don't let me know. That's for everybody to improve upon. And if you're the first one to catch it, you help out everybody else so they don't get confused about it later. Right. So that was the thing with that CD4 question that I sent that announcement on. You guys caught that, I think, or somebody mentioned it in time for me to tell you about it. And so everybody could benefit from that before the test, which everybody did really well on. I think you guys got like an 86 average. So good job on that. I hope that reflects, right? I hope that reflects your test average for the final. Typically, people, I will let you guys know, people's grades tend, I think I did this, but just in case I didn't, people's grades tend to stay about the same for the rest of the semester if you don't like step it up somehow, right? So if you keep doing what you've been doing, your grade will stay around the same. I don't see drastic improvements unless you make drastic changes. So this is that point. My class, it doesn't feel like it, like as you're going through it, but this class is very exam reliant for as far as your grade goes. More than half of your grade relies on exam grades. And that's on purpose, because the whole point of this class is to learn this and then prove to me that you learned it, not to earn free points by submitting an easy Cahoots or something like that, right? So that's the point of the exams being so heavy, but then we have the padding of the other things. There's no reason not to get your points on that. So keep up with that little stuff. Don't forget about the little stuff, right? We definitely don't want to slack on the little stuff. Those are easy points. Quizzes, I know a lot of people like to put them off and just like kind of do them. Like, oh yeah, I forgot about this. Let's just get it out of the way. This is the time of the semester to sit down with your notes, have them ready, do the quiz in the 15 minutes that you have. It really doesn't take that long if you're prepared when you start the quizzes. Get your points. No reason not to, right? Get that padding in where you can. That's one thing that can bring down people's grades pretty slack. So, yeah.
So for our final exam, will it be 50 questions of unit 4 and then 50 final questions?
Yes, so it'll be 50 questions, all from like unit 4 content. which I'm sure you guys, if you looked at Unit 4 and like did your presentation prep and everything, you know that some of the stuff in the past units are gonna be in there as well. Like it's pretty comprehensive in and of its own. But yes, so 50 questions will be roughly, I'd say, it's like might be 48 to 52, but roughly 50 questions will be, and very close to 50 questions will be Unit 4, and very close to 50 questions will be Units 1 through 3. So keep that in mind. Should I run out of like content for Unit 4 because it is kind of just straightforward, like, does this disease, is it a hemorrhagic fever? Is it like, what system does it affect? And most of the questions are as like, you look at the study sheet and it says like a thing about like a skin disease, like let's say MRSA. It'll be like MRSA is antibiotic resistant staph. And that's like all it'll say on study guide. And pretty much what the questions are going to entail because there's so many freaking diseases that there's not going to be a lot of in-depth detail that I'm going to test you on. So if it's not on the study guide, it won't be on this. There's also like a study table that I made with all the diseases and like the things, you know, we can learn about them. But again, that's a little bit more comprehensive than your study sheet. It's just to help lay out all the differences so we can remember differences and help our brain recall them. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. But I feel like at this point, we kind of know what to expect from study sheet content and everything like that. I have been for Unit 3, I provided you guys all of my study notes, you know, there at the end. This is me being true and honest with you. There will not be something like that for Unit 4. I'm not even prepping stuff like that for Unit 4. So this is that point where we need to start making our own notes like that. So make your own study sheets that are, you know, sectioned off in color so you can see the little tidbit of information and hopefully it'll pop up in your head whenever you're studying and help you out. So this is the time to really stretch your legs on making your own notes that are effective for you based on the ones that I've given you guys for the lab and the Unit 3. So do that. Any other questions? Cool. So Saturday, my husband and I went to go to Crest, and then after Crest, he wanted to make hot dogs. So it's just like start up, like we have a fire pit with a grill. So it's like we wanted to start up the fire pit with the charcoal, and we have a little thing that spins over the top to put the hot dogs on, and all this. So nice, so cute, whatever. But I'm like, yeah, while you're doing all that BS, I'm gonna go ride the motorcycle around. And I'll see you later, right? And so I do that, and I go and I ride the motorcycle over from where I live on the Bethany side of Overholser over to like the Yukon side of Overholser, just halfway around the lake. It's pretty like light traffic and not many cars, and it's like low speed limit. So I'm like, this will be good. Get out there, and this is not beautiful weather this weekend, and whatever. So I am getting out of the neighborhood to go out to the lake. And there's this hill that comes down because the lake is low and the neighborhood's high. There's a hill that comes down to the lake, and I waited for traffic and it's getting ready to go, and another car came. So I braked, but I didn't grab my clutch, and I killed my engine, which is fine. This happens, right? We are expecting things whenever you're reacting. And it kicked when it did that, and because I was leaning to go into the turn, I'm very prepared to catch the motorcycle on my left side, but I wasn't at that moment to catch it on my right side. So it fell over. Not a big deal. I can lift it. So, you know, lift it up and I go on with my life and like, oh, I'm humiliated. And my bike is it's like the cheapest cruiser that you can buy. So like actual motorcycle. I don't have like a speed bike. I don't have a, you know, like a tiny motorcycle or something. It's a motorcycle, but it's the smallest, cheapest you can get for what it is. And so it floods if it tips on its side. And so I have to wait for like the gas to like settle before I can start. I'm just sitting there at the stop sign, you guys. Like, hey, just any time now I'm going to start my engine, I promise. So finally get it started and I go. Have a great time going down the lake. Motorcyclists, when they pass each other, they wave at each other. It's a motorcycle wave, kind of like the Jeep wave, you know, and I don't get Jeep waves because I'm not a Wrangler. And I don't know if you guys notice, I drive a Jeep. So like it's a Jeep Compass, but it's not a Wrangler. And I feel like it's so elitist, but that is what it is. So I got a motorcycle wave though, and it was legit. So I was really excited. You know, I get home and I'm like, you know, putting the motorcycle away and go up to my husband. And I'm like, man, my leg kind of hurts. And like, I look at my leg and like on my left leg, which I don't know how this happened. It's like fell on the right side, but I guess because I wasn't paying attention that like I hit my leg somehow on like the pegs that you rest your feet on when you ride. And it had a grapefruit-sized bruise, like here on my leg right down here. And it was like swelled up the size of my fist. Like it was like huge. And I mean, I can walk it, it's a little sore when I walk, whatever, but like, guys, it's like, it was Saturday. And so when I look at it, it's already bruising. You know how it gets when you get a really bad bruise and you just know that it's gonna look worse and worse. And it looks so bad. And I iced it. You know how they say 15 minutes on, 15 minutes off for the first 24 hours. And you do the warm, moist heat. And I did all that, but it still looks rough. I'm gonna show it to you guys so you guys can see, 'cause I'm sure you want to. Do my little fancy leg dance here.
Yeah.
But like, this is that. So now it's like when I said grapefruit, I mean like, US GMO grapefruit. Natural. So this is what it looks like so far. No, I'm fine. I just did stupid stuff. So this was all me. But anyways, I thought I could show you guys.
It was worth it for the wave.
It was so nice out though. It really was. I'm glad I went.
And cold all weekend.
No, I had on basically this. I had on essentially some outfit and I had like a leather jacket on. I was totally cool and all that. So. Yes, of course. Yeah.
That's all that matters.
That's right.
So we'll start with our presentations. Ingrid wants to go first. That's okay with everybody. Okay.
I just want to be done.
Yeah.
All right. And we will,
I'm gonna go after Ingrid.
well, I think yours is like on one of the other days, isn't it?
Last week's out.
Oh, that's right. Okay, cool. All right. That works fine. Yeah, so we'll have Ingrid and then you can go, or we can go, I don't care who goes, as long as all four of you go today.
Okay.
So you'll, the deal, click with the mouse or use the arrows.
Okay.
And I'm gonna sit in the back and, we'll do the same thing we usually do with the usual stuff, but keep them,
Okay.
keep them brief. This one doesn't need to, you have your info in your slides, you just have to show me that you know your stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, like submit it on the canvas?
Yeah,
Okay, so she'll just bring it up.
right.
Yeah, I'll bring it up for you.
Okay, cool.
And what I do, I just hit enter? Everything?
Yeah, enter space or the arrow.
Okay. Okay, so my presentation is on mpox, previously known as the monkeypox. People still call it monkeypox, but because of the racial connotation, that's why, they call it mpox now. I'm used to saying monkeypox, so some stuff it comes out, apologies. Okay, so as far as the pathogen, it's a DNA virus, and it is related to the orthopox family, which is part of the orthopox family, and it's related to the smallpox. But it's not as serious. Still serious, but not as serious. Under a microscope, it's brick-shaped, and they multiply in the cytoplasm of the nucleus. It uses virulence factors like proteins to basically evade the immune system, spread, and it also, try not to look, and also damage the host cells.
Sure, this is exactly what I'm looking for, guys. I don't need you to read everything on the slide.
Okay.
You're doing great.
Okay, now as far as transmission is concerned, I have to look at this word because I always want to say zootonic, and it's zoonotic.
Yeah.
It's a zoonotic disease, which is essentially, it means that it is transmitted from animals to humans. And while yes, monkeypox can come from monkeys, it also comes from other animals, but especially rodents. And one of the ways to get it is eating undercooked meat from an infected animal. And then, as you can see, it goes downhill from there because it can spread that easily in those ways. Symptoms, pretty much like everybody's project here is going to be the same symptoms as usual. So it's really going to be, it's hard to tell. Oh, yeah, that. These are some examples of what the lesions look like. So yeah, not pretty. Anyone could get mpox. When there was a breakout a year or two ago, I think it was, they wanted to call it a gay virus and stuff like that. It's not. Absolutely anybody can get it. And you could also get it by like caring for an infected, caring on somebody that's infected. As far as diagnostic methods and stuff like that, you can do viral culture, antibody testing, but the most common is the PCR testing. And that one is, what they do is that they swab you directly to your lesion. And from what I read, it's extremely painful. You can only imagine. And as far as treatment, there is an antiviral medication for it. And what that does, it just stops it from spreading. There are a couple vaccines, Genios is what it's called. That's the newer one. That one is 2 doses, 28 days apart. And then the older one is ACAM 2000. That one's older. It takes about 4 weeks. No, it takes 4 weeks to reach immunity, and it has a lot more side effects. And to recover, it's basically isolation and, time. That's it.
The pro of going first is get out of the way and worry about it. It's a pro for all of you. It's a pro for all of you following, because now you have somebody that did a great job on their presentation and you know what is expected of the rest of you. Yes. Okay. Let me bring up Sarah's, okay, I'm about to pull up a thing that, let me see if I can, I don't want to hide this, but everybody not look at the grade portions of these, please. Again, keep in mind, these are not finalized grades anyways, right? Nobody's finalized grade is posted at all. They're just guidelines anyway, so don't like look at things. And we all know everybody's is all docked for the delivery anyways, so it doesn't really matter. Okay. Yes, what's up? Yeah, I love it. Yeah. It's lit.
What do you think?
Don't be looking at me, y'all. I'm trying to do my little thing. Right, look at the screen. Is this how you do it? Okay. All right, so today my presentation is over chlamydia. Y'all, everybody knows somebody that had chlamydia before. So we're not even gonna go through that. Okay, chlamydia is like a commonly sexually transmitted disease. You know, you can get it from, doing the doo-doo, or, or you can get it from your mother if she had it while she was giving birth to you. So chlamydia is an agent from the Chlamydia trachomatis. So basically, it is a very tiny germ. It's a bacteria. It's like a negative gram-bacterium, but instead of it having a peptidoglycan layer, it has like a cysteine-rich protein that stabilizes it instead. So, and it comes in like 1.4 million base pairs, and it can encode about 900 genes. So there are 2 forms of the chlamydia. It is the elementary body, which is the infectious portion, and then there is the, what was the next one? It was another body, let me see. Reticulate and the reticulate body is the non-infection version. So this is the story that I made up in my head about it. So the reticulate body is the one that it infects. It attaches onto the host cell, and it's infecting things. Then it goes inside the host cell and it transforms into the reticulate form. So it's chilling out, it's not infecting nobody, but then it gets bored. Like, this party is we need more people. So it comes back out and transforms back into the elementary body and starts infecting more people, and that's how it does its infections and whatnot. So the primary risk factors are unprotected sex, multiple sexual partners, lack of testing, and all that good stuff. Age, because young kids, we just do what we want to do. Modes of transmission is vaginal sex or mother-child transmission, in women, it's usually an asymptomatic thing if it's early on, but if it does come with symptoms, then the women, it'll be pelvic pain, bleeding, pain during intercourse, inflammation. For men, it's discharge from the, testicular pain, itching or irritation in both, abnormal, discharge and painful urination and stuff like that. Differential diagnosis, people can mistake it for gonorrhea, trich, bacterial vaginosis, yeast infections, and yada, yada. The diagnostic methods, the one that's mostly common is the NATS, is the nucleic acid amplification test. It's the most sensitive to the chlamydia, detecting the chlamydia, but they do urine tests, swab tests, rapid tests, and serology, but serology is very rare. Treatments is antibiotics. The most common one is azithromycin, and then they have doxycycline and fluoxetine versions. Prevention is use condoms. Okay, limit your sexual partners or get tested, and or just stay abstinent. So basically, that was basically it. So much.
All right, we have, who else? We have Madison and Leanne. That's right. All right, Leanne will go next. All right. She's not here yet? Okay, that's fine. I know how she comes in late. I was not paying attention, so. All right, Madison. If Leanne gets in late, we can always have her go later on. It's not a big deal. Okay, that's fine. We can either have somebody else go, we'll just have her go on a different day. Since we had all that intro stuff today, but I think this is ready. You'll have to use the arrows for this one. Okay.
Okay, so I did mine over the scarlet fever.
There's something else I should try?
Oh, is the arrows not working?
Yeah.
Click on it again, like on the actual screen, and you try the arrows again.
Oh, perfect.
So sometimes it's also called spirulina. This is the Streptococcus pyogenes gene, same as strep throat. So it's carried by the T12, and then some of the virulence factors is in protein, I almost said hyaluronic acid, that's for your skin, but that acid. And then, so it's basically contracted through how you get most things through being near people, sharing drinks with them. Risk factor proximity, so living in the same household, going to the same school, and it affects most people between the ages 5 to 15. Usually the signs and symptoms are just like your flu symptoms. However, sometimes you'll get like a strawberry tongue, and I read on it and it seems very painful. You'll get like a white tongue and it peels off and it's like raw and it doesn't seem like something I would want to go through. And then usually you'll have a rash that starts like on your chest and stomach and then it feels like sandpaper. Can be misdiagnosis, chickenpox, foot and mouth, measles, toxic shock syndrome. Diagnostic methods. So usually they'll do a rapid strep test on you. Most of the time this will come back as negative, but basically how they do the rapid test is they do a immunoassay, so it's like the color and it's with a little strep. Since that comes back negative, they'll do a culture swab, and then they'll just let that incubate, bless you, incubate for about 24 hours, and then that will come back with the growth on it. If that doesn't work, they can do a blood swab. And then sometimes I read that they'll do a liver analysis and liver function, and sometimes they do this just to make sure that all your levels are good. And then treatment, 10 days of usually penicillin or amoxicillin. There's a couple different antibiotics that you can take if you're allergic to those. And then usually just like taking ibuprofen and resting and drinking lots of fluid will help you get over it.
Ooh. Holy. All right, so my turn. We'll be pretty brief with this. Again, it's gonna be sort of like while we do this, a little bit like you guys' presentation, we're gonna mention, big points. And there will be other information that'll be on these slides that we're just kind of gonna skim through, I'm just saying. So if it's on the study sheet, that's the stuff you'll need to know. So our defenses so we're gonna do the skin and eyes today. We start with the skin and then we'll jump into the eyes after that. So for the skin, we know that our skin is a protective layer that prevents infection. We also got that keratin waterproofing protein that prevents the organisms from being able to get into the deeper layers. We have all sorts of different layers of the skin, which I'm not going to ask you about, but you might want to know for things like putting this into context of your stuff you learn in anatomy and physiology. And then, of course, shedding the hairs and the skin cells on your skin as well is still a protective factor, right? Because if you can shed those layers, then you can get rid of the microbes attached to them. We also have our sweat and our oils of our skin and our pH and salt on our skin that makes it inhospitable as well. We also have lysozyme, which we learned about previously, is an enzyme that's going to be able to break down peptidoglycan of a lot of our bacterial cell walls. So that's protective. We have this in our sweat as well as our tears and in our saliva. So sweat and tears are going to apply with this chapter today. Our biome on our bodies is pretty important for providing that microbial antagonism that we keep talking about, that filling up the stadium seats. They can make antimicrobial molecules, certain lipids that are unfriendly to the guys trying to take up the empty seats, and also using up nutrients in the area and making the pH unfriendly too. The most common microbes that are associated with our biome are going to be Staphylococcus epidermidis and Propionibacterium acnes, or P. acnes. You probably heard of this in skin care commercials and stuff like that. It is the bacteria that causes most acne cases. About 4% of the population has Staph aureus as part of their biome. That doesn't make it MRSA. It just means that something that just exists as part of the normal biome, takes up a couple stadium seats here or there, but can, in some situations, in the right circumstances, cause infections for that person. Yeah, most of our bacteria, like it says, are going to be found on in the moist areas of your skin, whether that's going to be in folds, like in your armpits, or in areas like the inside of the follicle areas where it's protected from the surface, because that surface can be pretty dry and unfriendly to most. So here are some basic terms relating to skin lesions. Bulla, which is a large wide vesicle. Think of it as a giant blister, right? Cysts, macules, maculopapular rashes, which are kind of between macules and papules. Macules are flat. We're going to see these when we talk about certain fungal infections. You don't see any raising in some of these guys. And then we have the maculopapular rashes that are going to be kind of a step in between the raised and the flattened. Papules are elevated, like we think of warts. And then petechiae are purpura, essentially like bursted blood vessels. There's a plaques, like we see with psoriasis. These are pretty larger flattened lesions that are wider than papules and macules. We also have purpura. We already said about purpura. We had the petechiae is related to that. Pustules, scales, whatever, vesicles that are filled with fluid. All right, starting with MRSA. MRSA stands for methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus. Most of us heard of it. It's resistant usually to multiple antibiotics, because if you're resistant to methicillin, you're usually resistant to the other ones that are below it, we would use before methicillin. So you're resistant to quite a lot of antibiotics here. We have to reach for some of the more dangerous ones, dangerous for you, toxic ones, in order to treat this. You'll see pus, and it'll be raised, hot to the touch, but it tends to be localized when you do have the upper level soft tissue infections. Next is just the causative agent of this is Staph aureus. Like we said, we know it's staphylo, which means grape-like clusters. Streptococcus, it's round cells, and aureus, it just is referring to the color, the golden color of the growth on the media itself. It's non-motile and, you know, whatever, it can withstand extremes in salt and pH. It is not a halophile. It doesn't like the preferred salt. It just can withstand it. Okay, so it's halo tolerant. Says available moths, but it's available months after air drying. It can withstand being dried out pretty well too. So it's pretty hardy. It makes some enzymes like coagulase, hyaluronidase, staphylokinase, DNase, lipase, and catalase. These guys are all features that we can use to identify it, as well as features, these are what we call virulence factors, right? So these help this bacteria infect your skin and cause disease. Hyaluronidase, for example, is an enzyme that's going to break down hyaluronic acids, which is part of your extracellular matrix. Keeps everything together, maintained, moisturized the way it's supposed to. So this will help for deeper tissue infections and things like that. That's just one example. We're learning about catalase in the lab this week. Catalase is that enzyme we learned about previously that breaks down hydrogen peroxide. And some of these bacteria have the ability to do that innately. So this is one of those. We already know that Staph aureus can grow on mannitol salts agar. We will introduce that in lab as well. So that's a good way to identify it. And coagulase, okay, so it can coagulate plasma, which isn't necessarily a feature that's entirely helpful for it during infection, but it is a feature that is extremely useful in identifying it in the lab. If we think you have a staph infection and we want to confirm that it is Staph aureus, Staph epidermidis, a normal inhabitant of your skin, that guy's one of the main ones, right? That one does not make coagulase. So we can mix your patient sample in with some rabbit plasma and see if it coagulates it. If it does or doesn't, then that is how we'll decide if it is Staph aureus or not. So this is a picture of that. We have coagulation of that rabbit plasma after mixing it with the patient sample, and that would mean it was positive. All right, so that's the summary of MRSA. Next we're moving on to impetigo. Impetigo is sort of a flaky bacterial infection of the skin. You see a lot of this sort of stuff, looks almost scab-like, but it's from plasma and fluids and dead skin cells, as well as bacteria on the skin surface. We see this a lot in kids. This is pretty common in kids. It's pretty similar to what you would see with like choroidal and stuff like that, okay? So it's usually Staph aureus or Streptococcus pyogenes that cause this illness. Pretty equally, we usually actually are associated more with Streptococcus pyogenes or strep coming in, and then staph will like take over and cause most of what we consider to be the pathogenic effects of it. Yes, that's all this is saying. Here with staph, we do have exfoliative toxins, A and B. A lot of this crap has toxins called A and B. I'm not going to have you discern which ones A's do this or which ones B's do that, okay? But just know it has some toxins that can cause exfoliative characteristics, meaning that is going to be the detachment of the skin cells. That's where we get that flaking from. We also have coagulase, just like we did with MRSA. Strep, on the other hand, is beta hemolytic, so it would create that clearing on blood agar that helps us identify it. It also means that we're going to be able to break down the red blood cells in your own body. It is gram-positive coccus as well. Doesn't just cause strep or scarlet fever like we learned about, but potentially also pneumonia, puerperal fever, which I don't know much about, but you would imagine that you have purpura like petechiae associated with this. Necrotizing fasciitis, which we're going to talk about, which also, just to be clear, is Leanne's presentation. So she will have that for us whenever she is able to join us again. It's really good, by the way. She has some really disgusting pictures, and I can't wait for you guys to see it. If you guys don't know about necrotizing fasciitis, it is essentially the flesh-eating disease. So when you get deeper tissue infections, usually by strep pyogenes, if we have certain kinds of infections, necrotizing fasciitis can be caused by a slew of bacteria. A whole ton of different bacteria can cause it. Actually, most commonly, it's going to be your enteric bacteria getting into the skin where they shouldn't be. But this is one of the other bigger ones, and essentially will lead to very fast spread of infection throughout the deeper tissues, to where the only option is debridement and removal of the contaminated tissue. Usually to diagnose that, you'll be drawing a line around like the redness area. It starts out usually not as like an open wound so much as it can be like there's a wound and redness around it. You draw a line about the red area, and if it spreads within a certain time limit, it's probably necrotizing fasciitis, and you have to start cutting away the red area and any other diseased tissue so you can prevent the spread. It's extremely hard to contain and often leads to limb loss for most people. It can be very severe. Strep is also associated with other bloodstream infections and rheumatic fever, where we have inflammation of heart tissue associated with antibodies you make against strep attacking your own heart. So it's virulence factors, whatever LTA is. I'm sure I would care. It's not on your test, so I don't. M protein, and then of course that hyaluronic acid capsule, which is again part of our extracellular matrix, but for them is the purpose for its capsule that helps prevent the phagocytosis. It also has the enzyme hyaluronidase. It doesn't break down its own capsule, but does break down your extracellular matrix. So we'll identify this with a rapid test that we have, immunochromatographic, like a lot of the COVID home tests and whatever. And we'll test for its sensitivity to certain antibiotics as well as that beta hemolytic properties. So here is our comparisons for impetigo. Cellulitis is a spreading infection in the dermis. Now we're getting deeper into the tissue. This does not require a wound for entry. It can just happen due to biome just spreading deeper into the tissue on its own. So we don't necessarily need an entry wound here. This is pretty common in diabetes. So you can just have an injury that doesn't have an open wound, but can lead to an immune response that allows normal bacteria to invade deeper into the tissues because of just the circumstances in the environment. So we'll have pain, tenderness, redness. This is pretty common in lower leg and those who have compromise in their cardiac flow, like those with diabetes. Next is staphylococcus scalded skin syndrome. Pretty common in younger children. If they get staph infections of their skin, it's essentially the detachment of the upper layers of the skin from the lower layers of the skin. So we have large bullous lesions, large sort of blister-like areas of the skin. I'm talking like almost full body. So it can be quite shocking for parents to deal with. I had one of my own cousin's kids have to take them to a specialist in Colorado because they live in Kansas, and so they didn't have anybody in Kansas. I was able to treat it. So it can be that serious that you need to have treatment for it that way. But it's a systemic impetigo, gets a little bit deeper in the tissues. So we have exfoliative toxins, essentially lifting the skin layers from those toxins, A and B toxins we talked about previously. So this is what one of those lesions might look like. This is on an adult, but this can become almost, like I said, systemic, body, widespread on the body. That's staph. All right, next is gas gangrene. This is usually caused by Clostridium perfringens, which is gram-positive, it's endospermic, and it is also anaerobic. So it doesn't like to be near the air. If you get a deep wound infection, we saw gas gangrene associated a lot in like older wars where you get stab wounds from like bayonets or something. And then deep in those tissues from the environment, because these guys are just everywhere, get deep into the tissue and cause infections with C. perfringens. Then because it's anaerobic, it's going to be using things like sulfurs or nitrates or something like that. And we, as our result, we talked about this in lab, right? Or maybe you guys, yeah. Did we inoculate? Yeah, we did. Our sim media, right? We did our butts, we stabbed them, but we haven't talked about how they work yet for you guys. So essentially the reason we stab our butts for the sim media is to get that bacteria way down deep into that bottom part of our media. So there's no oxygen there. That encourages anaerobic behavior. And in that case, in SIM, the S stands for sulfur, and we're looking for sulfur reduction. And so they use sulfate-based products, like we use O2, right? So think of them as using S instead of O, okay? And so their byproduct, instead of we have H2O as our byproduct, as our final electron acceptor oxygen, meets with those protons and those electrons, and it makes water as our byproduct when we make ATP. In aerobic respiration, well, an anaerobic, replace the oxygen with sulfur. And so their product is H2S instead of H2O. And that H2S, dihydrogen sulfide, is a gas. And so with us, it's going to react with iron and fix it into a black byproduct, black precipitate that we'll see in our SIM media. So easy enough for us to visualize. But in your tissue, when it's made, there's no iron to fix it in place. So gas, the H2S, will accumulate in your actual muscle tissues. That's why it's called gas gangrene. You get little pockets of air in the actual muscle tissue itself and causes pressure within the muscle. And causes fluids to leak from the cells if they're becoming damaged from that. And you guys probably heard about whenever you have to make fasciotomies to cut open skin so that as it swells from inflammation or whatever, it doesn't rip itself open, which is way worse than having the cuts. They'll do that with this to let the gas escape so we don't have as much pressure building from the gas. However, if that isn't done soon enough, you will have necrosis from the damaged tissues, and that will essentially die and turn black, and that's gangrenous at that point. But you'll see huge blisters forming on the outside of the muscle, like on the skin itself, from all of that pressure building up from the gas and the fluid leaking out of the muscle tissue. And that will be filled with like black fluid from the necrotic byproducts and everything. It's pretty gross. You can get this from, of course, if you're, back in World War I getting stabbed or something, but like also if you step on a nail or if you have severe injuries, and it can even present without open wound exposure in some cases. These endospores are pretty common in the soil, in the vaginal tract, and all over the place. So this isn't something that's rare. There's two forms. We have the cellulitis and the myonecrosis forms. Myonecrosis will spread to healthy tissues, whereas the anaerobic cellulitis will stay in the location where we have it. And that was gas gangrene. It's a picture of a dry version of gas gangrene. You can also have very wet, leaky, oozy forms of it. This picture of a cross-section of muscle tissue, that space, anywhere you see white on this is essentially gas-filled space. The dark little dots are our bacterium, and the lighter pink is our muscle fibers. So you can see those bacteria getting in there, creating the gas, and that will create, essentially, if I start blowing air into your muscles, that's what it's going to be doing to that. So they have their own virulence factors that are going to help with tissue destruction. Next, we have our rash diseases. A lot of these are poxes and things related to our poxes. We talked about some of these already. Starting with chicken pox, this is a mild disease caused by a herpes virus called varicella zoster. So it is a herpes virus. It does get into your DNA and hang out there for pretty much the rest of your life. It can reactivate and form shingles. It can be an issue for those who are immunocompromised and can't contain the infection, but for most of us, we just get some itchy spots. The spots themselves will not cause any scarring, but if you scratch them, especially if you're a kid and you're not washing your hands, then you'll get scars. Guys, I have chickenpox scars all over my body. So I have the feels for these little kids that have to go through it. I just remember how itchy it was. I was like 7 or something when I had it. Anyways, so usually, again, this is a viral infection and it doesn't even have symptoms for 10 to 20 days after exposure. So you bring your kid to a chickenpox party like they did back in the 80s. That's how I got mine. And you get chickenpox symptoms showing up 10 to 20 days after that. And then, of course, we know what chickenpox would look like. You start off with sort of flu-like symptoms and then get the itchy spots all over you after that. Secondary infections are going to be strep or staph typically, and then that's what's going to cause the scarring. So scratch it, you open up the secondary bacteria, and then get that. It'll hide out in your nerves, and then later on in life, whenever your immune system starts to wane, it will come out again along those nerves and present as shingles in those areas where they hid. Next is smallpox. This is essentially caused by another virus. This is variola. So it could be variola major or variola minor. Both of them pretty severe. Variola major was the worst, of course. It was somewhere around 30% to 50% fatality rate. So very high fatality rate, highly disfiguring. This didn't require you to scratch at it to cause scarring to occur. It was eliminated from the planet back, I think 1978 was the last case of it, somewhere around then. And we don't have it anymore naturally. There are, of course, frozen stores of it in various nations, including the United States and Russia. And that's all we have left of it now. It was the first vaccine ever developed. So the very, very, very first vaccine ever was against the variola virus. And it was Edward Jenner was his name. And he noticed that the milkmaids in the area had nice, beautiful skin. They didn't seem to have any scarring from smallpox. So why weren't they getting smallpox? Well, the cows got cowpox. And all these pox viruses, smallpox, cowpox, monkeypox, they're all very, very closely related. So he noticed that if they got infected with cowpox on their hands, maybe a few lesions and were covered, they didn't get actual full-blown smallpox. So he took lesions from cows that had cowpox and scraped them and inoculated his own son because he was so confident in his theory. And what they do is like excoriate, basically lifting those top layers of the epidermis to get down into the lower layers into the dermis. And once that's exposed, it runs its course as a lesion. And when the scab falls off, you have immunity to it. And that's how the current smallpox vaccine works to this day. So that's one of those intradermal vaccines. We just don't see a lot of those anymore. But anyways, he did it to his son, popped his kid out amongst the population that had smallpox, and he was protected. The virus that causes cowpox is called vaccinia. So he used vaccinia virus to protect against variola infection. But that is the reason why vaccines are called vaccines after vaccinia. So pretty cool little bit of information. Next, we had hand, foot, and mouth disease, which we don't really need to go over. We are going to talk about that, but just not right now. Okay, so this is just a viral disease caused by the Coxsackie virus, causes some spotting and diseases like that. So we're going to move on to our maculopapular rashes. This, and also hand, foot, and mouth disease is very common in children. It's different from, I guess we're going to be going over the hoof and mouth disease, which is in animals, right? That's what you're going to be doing? Yes, okay. I always get them confused, everybody always does, and so. I think somebody else is doing hand, I know, somebody else, that's the thing, I always confuse the two, and the thing is, I'm not going to be testing you over the hoof and mouth as much, but we're still going to have the presentation over it. So that'll be Eileen's presentation later on in the semester. But so back to hand, foot, and mouth, you get spots. I don't know what to tell you. It's pretty much it, man. You get spots all over, especially the hands, the genitals, and the feet. They're little blister-like spots. That's about it, though. It's Coxsackie virus, and if you don't get it as a child, you're probably not going to ever know as an adult. But almost everybody does get it as a kid in some form or another. So pretty common one. But yeah, if you have little dot spots all over the kid's body, it's probably that. Okay, maculopapular rash diseases. This is measles, rubella, fifth disease, and roseola. All right, measles, y'all, I don't even know what else to say about it. You know, it's just going to be a rash-like disease that's going to be spread by a virus. Get your vaccines. It's extremely contagious. So it's just one of the most contagious diseases known to mankind. Super easy to spread. So for herd immunity, we need 95% of the population to be vaccinated against measles to keep it from coming back out again. So that's why it's such an issue that people are going through the anti-vax movement. You get spots that are associated with this one and some sort of flu-like or cold-like symptoms as well as sore throats, but it can, in some cases, spread into meningitis and become more serious. Next is the German measles, also rubella. Rubella is more of an issue in pregnant women. So if you get rubella as an adult, you would probably never even know you were infected. But women who are pregnant that haven't had it before and become ill with rubella, who they themselves might not have any symptoms at all, can have miscarriage or permanent defects in babies as a result of having rubella, which is why we don't hear about it much because adults don't really get it. But it's included in that package when you get your measles, mumps, and rubella shots. So we want to protect against that. It's a pretty serious disease if it isn't controlled and it affects pregnant women. So it's first trimester is where the biggest risk is. You can also have postnatal rubella. So if you're a child that becomes infected with this, you can have more serious symptoms associated with this, including rash. And then congenital rubella is whenever you are a child that actually survives this and isn't subject to miscarriage, but you would have permanent defects like deafness and other abnormalities. And we had fifth disease. This is erythema infectiosum, a viral disease again, where you have that slapped cheek effect. It's like a redness of the face. It's actually tiny little dots that just look like an overall redness. Low-grade fever caused by human parvovirus B19. Super tame though, other than that. It's not all, that along with hand, foot, and mouth disease where we have the spots, those two very common, easily recovered by children who have healthy immune systems. Next is roseola. It's common in young children and babies. You have a little bit of spotted rash going on here, usually minor symptoms, and it doesn't usually is recovered very easily as well. 70% of cases actually don't have any rash or any symptoms whatsoever. And this is 100% of the US population is infected by adulthood, and it's not joking. Like, this isn't something that we really even treat. So it's like you can get this disease, but like you don't even think about it. So you've had it. Surprise. So I don't know other than that. So there's that. And here's our summary of those diseases. And we'll go over some of these in our later presentations on on Wednesday too. So wart-like eruptions, I just don't want to miss anything that we have to know. Warts are caused by HPV or human papillomavirus. We'll of course see this again in the sexually transmitted disease section. If you guys don't know about HPV, it can also cause cervical cancer. So we'll talk about it again later, but for now, warts anywhere on the body are usually caused by an HPV infection. So it can happen anywhere and cause different kinds and forms of warts. There's also another kind of wart caused by molluscum contagiosum. It doesn't present quite the same, and it's usually over large, like areas of the body, not like a wart here or there. So warts are not my favorite thing in the world. I'm going to be completely honest with you. They're also known as papillomas. You have common or seed warts that are painless and elevated. Plantar warts that are like embedded deeper in the skin, and they can be quite painful, usually on the feet. We have flat warts that can develop on other areas of the body. This is molluscum contagiosum, where you get these wart-like growths on the body, different virus. This is not HPV. It's literally molluscum contagiosum. It's really only an issue in people with a weakened immune system. So they can get this quite severely all over the entire body. Very disfiguring. We don't really have this here in the US, mostly in the Pacific Islands area that this is severe. Next is leishmaniasis. It's sort of like an open, wet wound that you can get. That's a flat lesion that will develop in the cutaneous versions or the mucocutaneous version. So cutaneous, we have this only on the skin. Mucocutaneous, we have the mucous membrane and the skin that can be infected. It's just different versions of this. It's transmitted by the bite of a sandfly. I don't know what else to say. It's in tropical regions. We see this a lot. We saw this a lot whenever we had like Desert Storm and the war in Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff, because they have sandflies that will carry this. So soldiers would get this. Next is cutaneous anthrax. This is an actual real life lesion caused by anthrax. It causes these necrotic flat lesions to develop in the skin. Anthrax doesn't just cause disease on the skin. It can cause disease in all sorts of parts of the body, such as gastrointestinal, or you can get a pneumonic version of it, depending if you breathe in the endospores. Again, it's Bacillus anthracis. We already know that it is an endospore forming bacterium from its name, right? Clostridium and Bacillus. So endospore forming, the endospores get into the skin and then cause these lesions, or they get into your lungs, or they get into your GI tract and whatever. So this is a 20% mortality rate if untreated. It is considered the tamer version of anthrax. Next is ringworm. This is gonna be Stephanie's topic, but we'll go over it briefly. This is caused by fungi. So a fungal infection is called a mycosis. So this is a cutaneous mycosis, or we're talking about a group of infections, cutaneous mycoses. These are caused by fungus called dermatophytes, which is derma, of course, being skin. So fungi that infect the skin. It can infect you all over the body, the scalp, beard, body areas, groin, feet, and nails. And they all have their own little names. They'll start with the actual infectious presentations are named as tinea something. Tinea refers to worm. They used to think back in the good old days that this was caused by a worm, because you would see that little circle presentation. It is not. It is always caused by a fungus. Ringworm is caused by a fungus. Keep that always in mind, all right? Most of us know that though, but just to be clear, these things are called tinea capitis, for example. So worms in the head area. So that's what these are named after, but they're not actual worms caused all by fungi. It's just how old names for it. We also have superficial mycoses that are just going to be in the very, very surface of the epidermis. They're superficial because they're not causing any serious damage to the lower tissues. This would include tinea versicolor. Again, tinea, it's not a worm, it's a version of a fungal infection. It's caused usually by Malassezia yeast. So remember, yeast are fungi. It will lead to problems with melanocytes. So we'll have patches of skin that are lighter and patches of skin that are darker. This can be treated with antifungals, and you can recover from it, but sometimes the pigment loss can be permanent. We also have other conditions that are considered superficial mycoses, like folliculitis, psoriasis, can be related to this, and seborrheic dermatitis. All of these not considered to be serious as far as deep tissue. This is examples of tinea versicolor. All right. Next, into the eyes. Where are we at? 11. Cool. We have the okay, let's talk about the structures, I guess is what it wants me to do first. I'm just trying to jump into the diseases because that's the part I care about. All right, the covering of the eye that is keeping everything like covered, secure, maintains the environment of the eye to make sure the eyes are functioning and moist and everything the way they should be, is called the conjunctiva. It's the exposed environment of your eye. It secretes oils and fluids and helps lubricate everything when we're blinking. Blinking is important, right? So we have your cornea. That's the absolute outer layer of the eye itself. So that's your windshield of your eye. Blinking helps remove debris from that. Tears help wash everything away. All of that is going to work together to help remove microbes and keep you from getting infections in the eye. There's also mucus involved in the mucosal layers in the eyelids as well. What do I want to say about it? I don't think that's it. It's an immune privileged site. We're going to talk about immune privilege a little bit more in the CNS in the next chapter. But immune privilege is important because we don't want to have an overreactive immune response and damaged tissues that could lead to blindness whenever you are, in the earlier days of mankind living out in the wild amongst predators, and now you're blind because you had an eye infection and your inflammatory response did that. So we have a reduced immune response in the eye, and in fact, very specialized immune response for the eye specifically. This is taken to the extreme with your CNS. Your immune cells do not ever go into your CNS. They have their own immune system, essentially. They're the same kind of immune cells, but they're just adapted for not having an overreaction. Because you could have damage to your eye and have blindness that you can recover from. But if you have damage to your CNS, you're not recovering from that. Your CNS can't heal. If you cut a nerve, that's that. So if you're paralyzed from an infection and having an overreactive immune response and inflammatory reaction, then you're done. So that's the same kind of idea with the eye, just to a lesser extent. So we want to have a very gated access to our eyes so we can maintain our visual senses. So conjunctivitis is an infection of the conjunctiva, so our entire outer protection of our eye, our eyelids, and everything related to this. So this is bacterial, viral, or allergic. Bacterial has a milky or yellowy discharge associated with it. The other ones have clear exudate. If you're having an allergic conjunctivitis, that's literally like if you have allergies and your eyes start watering and turning red and itchy, that's conjunctivitis, allergic conjunctivitis. So a lot of clear weeping associated with that. You see similar thing with viral infections, but less fluid, but the bacterial ones, you'll have that redness of the eye and the gooiness of the milkiness or yellow discharge. This typically we think of when we talk about pink eye, highly, highly contagious. Here's a little baby that has a bacterial neonatal conjunctivitis. These slides just have a ton more pictures, but they pared it down for like accessibility reasons, so you could like see all the text better. But I hope that, and what you'll see too, whenever we see Leanne's presentation, because she asked me what would be appropriate for showing you guys for pictures, right? We're all going into the healthcare field and we're all adults. We need to be prepared to see disgusting pictures in this class. Yes, and it's not for us necessarily to gawk at or to point at or say this is gross, but keep in mind that these people that are in these pictures actually lived through these infections. They actually had to deal with it. They had to have necrotizing fasciitis. They had to have these sexually transmitted diseases. You will be seeing genitalia in that chapter, so be aware of that. These people had to suffer through it, so we need to have respect for the fact that they did deal with it, and we're learning about how to treat them appropriately. So I hope we can manage that, and I hope I don't have to give like content warnings in this class. I'm just saying, because I don't have a lot of respect for people that think that I do. I'm just saying. I mean, you guys know what you're getting into, hopefully, with this unit. So far, it's not been too bad, so we've been a little bit lucky. But anyways, trachoma. Trachoma is caused by chlamydia. So chlamydia, the same exact bacterium that causes the sexually transmitted chlamydia, also causes trachoma, which is blindness in the eye. You get trachoma in your eye, you get chlamydia in your eye. It causes these lesions on the underside of the eyelid, and then the eyelid will rub onto your cornea and cause blindness as a result of that. It's very treatable with antibiotics. It is the absolute #1 most common infectious cause of blindness in the world. That will almost certainly be on the exam. And it is on your study sheet. I know, it is crazy because we've probably never heard of it. And this is where we start realizing the spread of these diseases all over the world, some of them we've never heard of, how gated we are here in America as far as what suffering is going on in other countries outside of our own. All right, keratitis is a more serious infection version of conjunctivitis. So now we're involving keratinization of the eye. So we'll have hardening of the conjunctiva, inflammation of the conjunctiva and of the cornea. This is usually caused by infection post-trauma. So if you wear contacts, you have rubbing on your eye, and that's actually a version of trauma to your eye. You could potentially have, especially if you're switching to a new brand or you're just starting to use contacts before you get a sort of like scar tissue forming on your cornea from having contacts, you could have opening to microbes. It's usually associated with HSV1, which is, they say, a misdirected activation of oral herpes. Oral herpes, just to be clear, HSV1, we're talking about cold sores. This is not necessarily sexually related, though it can be transmitted sexually, okay? Both types of herpes, HSV1 and HSV2, can be associated with both the oral and the genital versions. It's just the oral version is most commonly HSV1. The genital version is most commonly HSV2. So to be clear about that. But anyways, you get cold sores and people, you know, you're just rubbing on, living your life, and you do your contacts and you get your cold sore virus into your eye and you can get keratitis. Another version of keratitis that's pretty common is acanthamoeba, which is found in tap water and fresh water. So if you are doing your contacts, always store your contacts in sterile saline solution. Don't ever be just using tap water for that. Washing your hands should be fine and shouldn't be introducing contamination as long as you're storing everything and handling everything correctly and using soap when you wash your hands beforehand. But this is actually pretty common. It lives in your water heaters and everything. We're going to talk about acanthamoeba as well as, what is the other one? Naegleria fowleri. In the next chapter, the neuro chapter. Those are our brain-eating amoebas. I just told you that you can get acanthamoeba, a brain-eating amoeba, from using your contacts. Just in case you weren't paying attention to that. Okay, it's in your hot water heaters. All right, next moving on to river blindness. This is caused by a helminth, the Onchocerca volvulus worm. It's like crazy with this, okay? So black flies will come and land on your eyes in third world countries, extremely common. People living in these sorts of situations, what we would consider squalid conditions, but them as their daily lives, will have a propensity to have flies landing on them, and they don't even swat them off because they're used to it in their lives. And then these flies can carry this worm with them in their feces, on their bodies and whatever. And the worms can make their eggs, essentially, will make their way into your body and eventually migrate into the actual eye itself. You will have worms in the eye cavity, and that's Onchocerca volvulus, leads to river blindness. Yes, they go into the eye, and the worms themselves are infected with a bacterium called Wolbachia. And if they didn't have that bacteria, they couldn't cause your disease. So they have to be infected with Wolbachia in order to cause river blindness. Pretty crazy stuff. We've got double infection going on there. All right, so these are great charts at the end of each of these chapters that will always refer back to all the diseases that we went over and which parts of the bodies are going to affect. So names of diseases and the causes. So I like these at the end. All right, we're back to it, y'all. It's your favorite part. I know. So most of these are going to be like this. We'll just have questions at the end of this unit 4 stuff and go over a few of the disease concepts. So if you guys want to get your stuff ready or stand up or whatever, I'm going to start calling out names. The first question, what pathogen does the coagulase test help to identify? We have Melissa Mercado. Coagulase. So I'll help you remember, it's the one with the test tube and the rabbit plasma. Remember which pathogen that was. You're okay. Help you out. It was one of the skin infections early on. Oh, so it's staph. Still listening around skin infection, you're good. It's staph. All right, next we have, which organism causes gas gangrene? Give me a close approximation of the name of it. We have Valeria. It was, good job. So Clostridium perfringens. Very proud of you for that. All right, is smallpox caused by a virus, bacteria, prion, or protozoa? This will be Marissa. Yes, that is. Good job. Just 2 more, guys. All right, what disease does parvovirus, human parvovirus B19 cause? Oh, I did have to call a name, don't I? I'm just standing here waiting for an answer. Okay, Kaylin. It could have been, yes. So I'll pass on you. Let's see who we have. Who else I picked? Elizabeth. Have a guess. It's one of the ones that have spots involved on the skin. I'll tell you that. So close. So this one is going to be one in that grouping, right? So this was the hand, foot, and mouth disease one. Yeah, so hand, foot, and mouth is parvovirus. And then the slapped cheeks was erythema infectiosum, right? So this is the two that I will get confused outside of the hoof and mouth one, which always I feel like is a blindsiding. All right, last question. We have Sarah H. What pathogen causes the most common infectious cause of blindness in the whole world? It is eye. Do you remember what that disease was at least? Yes. Chlamydia in the eye, exactly. So it's called trachoma. So it's chlamydia trachomatis. All right, good job, guys. So that's what you guys can expect going forward with these chapters. We'll have reviews of these diseases. Be sure you're following along with our study guides to make sure that you're understanding where that stuff's coming from.